The opposite's also true. If you hang around with people who don't have high standards, don't want to grow, don't want to learn, don't want to get better, that's ultimately the path that you're going to choose to take as well. You can have everything you want in life if you will help enough people get what they want. That was the Zig Ziglar. Greatness is on the other side of all the things that you don't want to do. It's those little habits and routines that I think create a foundation where you don't doubt yourself and you can always think positively about you're always moving forwards. You've got to keep working on yourself so that when the opportunities do keep coming, at one point you'll be ready to snatch it and grasp it.
Hello, listeners, and welcome back to The Science of Self, where you improve your life from the inside out. I'm glad today to welcome another guest to the podcast, Elliot Phillips, entrepreneur, author, and teacher helper, for if I could coin a phrase myself. Elliot, tell us about yourself, and we'll see where the conversation goes from there.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, first of all, Russell. So yeah, my name's Elliot Phillips. I'm a former PE teacher from the UK, and since leaving teaching in 2015, I launched a business where we help teachers, so classroom teachers, academic teachers, grow their own online tutoring businesses so that we can transform the way that teachers educate the world and help them build the future generations on their own terms. So you mentioned I'm an author. I've got a best-selling book, Teaching on Your Own Terms, and most of our clientele is US based. We just came off the back of the a big event that we held in Denver most recently a couple of weeks ago in mid-June. And yeah, the business has grown extremely well since COVID, and we're really passionate about helping teachers, become entrepreneurs, um, you know, helping them, improve how they think about things, how they think about business, and ultimately impact more students.
I have a background in teaching myself. I'm not sure how many of our listeners, I don't talk about my background very much. I taught high school math and science for 10 or 15 years. Certainly understand, and this was in a private school, so a lot of the frustrations I had there would be multiplied many times, so maybe by orders of magnitude for teachers in large public school
Mm.
organizations. But Elliot, I'm going to ask you to reassure our listeners that this is not a podcast generated or designated just for teachers. As I said in our run up to the show before we got online, the frustrations that apply to a teacher in an organization could apply to anybody in any business at any time. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm a part of many, like a fair few different masterminds, and so the mastermind coaching programs that I'm in are connect with business owners in all different niches, all different industries, and it's a massive part of the process, right? Is self-improvement, mental performance. It's I think Tony Robbins says, right, it's 20% mechanics and 80% psychology, right? And so, the business owners that I'll speak to struggle with the same problems with their own clients, and I think it's the foundation, right? If you've got to be a great mental performer before you can get the actual end result that you want, for sure.
Mastermind, you said that as if it's an organization, and it sounds like an organization I should be familiar with. Tell us more about that.
Oh, I just meant some coaching programs. I mean, so we'll generally just coin the term, I guess, mastermind, where it's a collective of, different business owners at different points on their journey coming together, and we will do in-person meetups. And so we'll just have the opportunity to collaborate and share what's working well. Again, whether that is self-improvement routines, business related growth strategies, or whatever it might be, just the coming together of business owners in a room instead of just being on Zoom all the time, which is kind of how we operate these days, right? And so it
Right.
really does create a bit of a shift when you get to see people in person and just being in that environment with around other people who want to grow and do well.
Absolutely. Is that searching my mind here, but I'm not sure. Is that the same phrase that Napoleon Hill used in Think and Grow Rich, the mastermind group? He talked about having a. Are you familiar with the book, first of
I
all?
have. I was just thinking that was one of the first that I read, I think, when I left teaching back in 2015. It's been a while. So you could be correct, yeah.
I'm not sure if that's the phrase, but listeners that haven't read or listened to Napoleon Hill's book, the concept is a group of basically a board of directors internalized, and you put together a group of people that you respect their opinions of, and you ask advice from them. If you're not familiar with that, check out Napoleon Hill's book Think and Grow Rich, along with
Well, it's kind
others
of
that
like
he's
what
written. In
people say, where you become the average of the five people you spend most of your time with, right? Or you become a reflection of your inner circle, so to speak, right? So the more
yeah,
people you can surround yourself with, that, and I think that's the essence of the book, right? Is getting around, or part of it, getting around people who are also doing well, who want to grow, who want to win, and that ultimately, rubs off on you. Whereas the opposite's also true. If you hang around with people who don't have high standards, don't want to grow, don't want to learn, don't want to get better, that's ultimately the path that you're going to choose to take as well. You know,
I believe it was Zig Ziglar said, "You are the person. You're becoming the person you will be in." This is a wrong quote, but in 5 years, except for the people you meet and the books you read. And of course, our society has changed. Technology has changed that because I can interact with a great number of people in a great number of ways. But the concept still applies. The people we meet, the books we read, the material we're exposed to determine who we're going to be. I like
absolutely.
the
I've got a great Zig Ziglar quote that I like to read in the morning to myself.
oh, great.
I'm just trying to load it up. Um, I've got a few different ones, but I've got a favorite. So you're obviously clearly very rehearsed in, the self-development, because you've got all these Napoleon Hill, Zig Ziglar, and I think that's really important. Those little principles that they've got just click in and just remind you how to operate. Here's one. You can have everything you want in life if you help enough people get what they want. That was,
Oh, I don't think I've ever heard that one. Yeah, read
yeah,
that one again.
yeah, here we go. You can have everything you want in life if you will help enough people get what they want. That was the Zig Ziglar. So I've got that on my little list of principles I like to read each day in the morning. Jim Rohn's obviously a great one as well. Yeah. Tony Robbins, key to success is hunger. Little things like this. Oh, here's a great one. I love this one. Greatness is on the other side of all the things that you don't want to do. Discipline
Very,
buys you the
very
freedom to
good.
do what you want. Failure is a requisite for success. All of these ones, I think I've got a list of about 48 here. And so just little things that I'll touch on each day in the morning, like you were saying about
No, those are great. On the other side of the things you don't want to do, I am currently narrating a book, actually for Peter Hollins, who is the source of the material on the science of self. I take that back. I'm working on some YouTube videos on the book, and the book is entitled "How to Do Things You Hate." Getting
yeah.
through those things that you don't want to do, and finding the motivation and the mindset to attack the things you don't want to do, but that have to be done. Interesting how so many things are tailing in this short conversation so far
Yeah.
into many other conversations we've had. It's great.
Yeah, well, I think that's what that's part of it, right? Is most people can get what they want, but we're just not, we're just wired to do what's easy. It's so much easier just to do what you know and keep doing that, because yeah, it's easy, and stuff that's hard, it's not enjoyable. But I think ultimately it becomes enjoyable, becomes because you become better at it, right? And so the more times
It,
you do something that's uncomfortable, eventually it becomes easy. Then you get good, and then you just do it consistently. I think that's the same with just so many things.
Absolutely. Yeah, the short-term investment in discomfort that pays off again in orders of magnitude in long-term comfort. You have to get out of your comfort zone to accomplish anything, really.
Yeah, whereas fitness related stuff, or whatever it might be, business related stuff, whether it's just starting the business, whether it's calling your leads, whatever it might be, whether it's making a podcast, um, trying to get your first house, or whatever it is, going to the gym the first time if you want to lose weight. I remember I went to a yoga session one time. This is fair few years ago now, and yoga wasn't really my thing, and I'm not particularly flexible. But I remember the instructor clearly realized that, and so they pulled me up and gave me a lot of feedback. I just really didn't like it, but I didn't go back, right? But everyone says how beneficial it was, and I'm sure if I went back for the next month, I'm sure I would have become better at it and would have got more comfortable, and I would have probably enjoyed it. But There's just one instance. I know for me personally, I didn't execute and I didn't continue. I didn't push because it was hard. And I think we'll all place ourselves in situations like that. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, they tell you it's not about, you don't have to be flexible to do yoga, but I've done enough to know that
it
you don't have to
helps.
be, but it's not really enjoyable if you're not.
No,
Very difficult.
that's right. Yeah, yeah. It wasn't too fun for me.
So that leads me into a question I wanted to ask early on. You were a PE teacher to start with. Can you go back a little bit in your life and share some insights into your mindset, maybe what directed you into education? And I guess this was in the UK, so your system
Yeah.
is quite a bit different than it would be in the US, as I'm familiar with. But tell us a little bit about your run up into education and how long you taught, when you got into it, and just some background there.
Yeah, sure, Russell. So I think it was just ingrained in me. My mum's dad, he was a French teacher and taught at international schools firstly in the UK and then internationally. And my mum's a teacher. She actually retired in the summer, but she just loves it so much. She's gone back and she was well overdue retirement anyway. And I think a lot of teachers are like that, and she just loves it. And so I think it was just kind of ingrained. And I was so into sport. And I think every kid's got that dream of becoming a professional sports player, right? And so for me, it was football or soccer, as you'd say in the States. And so, I ultimately, every kid, like I said, gets their heart broken when they realize the dream isn't going to come true. And so I'd realized that. So it was more along the lines of what could I do that involves sport for me, and PE teaching and teaching anything related to sport was the natural kind of path, I think. And plus, like I said, my mum, her dad was teacher, so it was just kind of in the blood in the family. And so I remember I went to straight after I left school, did the sports performance diploma, and then a Bachelor of Science in Sports Performance as well. That then led me into to teaching and also building an extracurricular sports company as well at the time. Met my wife, we moved to London, and had a couple more years there from 2013 to 2015. And then at that point, it was, I just wanted to travel, I think, at that point. And teachers don't get paid a lot, as you'll know. You said you were teaching in a private school. Just how could I do more? And I think I was just thinking very entrepreneurial. I was trying to build all sorts of businesses in the school staff room, selling electronic goods, clothing companies, nutrition stores online, and yeah, I was doing it in the school staff room on some days, building all these businesses. And so I just went into personal training whilst I kind of got my, I guess, bearings together, what I really wanted to do. And then I met quite a few people, some good mentors in London, being in a big city, to kind of, they put their arm around me and help guide me, I think. And I'm still really appreciative that I still meet up with a lot of them, not as clients anymore, as friends. And I remember it was Christmas 2016. One of the clients I had, he gave me this book, and he says, "I think you should spend the Christmas break reading this. I think it's gonna help you." And this is a super successful guy, one of the top entrepreneurs actually in the UK. And he gave me this book, and I read it over Christmas. I was like, wow, there's people running businesses like this online. I'm here doing it in person. So I ended up hiring a mentor, a coach from this book. I didn't know if it was true at the time, I'll be honest. I was reading all these kind of case studies and stories of people achieving these amazing results in their life and their business. I remember reading it thinking, surely these guys can't be producing these type of results and this type of revenue inside of their businesses online. I'll give it a go. I'll book in for a call and I'll see what happens. I remember then I jumped on the call with someone just after Christmas and I enrolled into this mentorship program. And just having a mentor at that particular point that I'd invested into myself, I think was just huge. And business went pretty well like that year, but I was still, I was actually still doing it in person. I hadn't leveraged online at that point. And but it just opened my eyes into like what was possible in terms of business with the right strategies, with the right mentorship, the right coaching. And I had a few different mentors since then, and I just remember if I could pinpoint how well the teacher project's done now, it would go back to that 2016 Christmas just being handed a book that unlocked everything. I really think that, it just opened my eyes to take the leap and invest into myself and, expand my goals. I think because I could see other people doing things that I wanted to do.
So even when you first began teaching, you were very entrepreneurial. You're running a business through to your fellow teachers and other people while you were learning how to teach. That had to be a pretty difficult time.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think the funniest one is I was when I was 9 years old, and this would be like or 10 years old, this would be like the sixth grade or fifth grade or something. I remember I spotted this guy or this young lad who was in the class with me, and he was really good at drawing the South Park characters, like Cartman, Kenny, what was the other guys? Stan, Kyle, Chef, all these guys that we were all into when we were like 9 years old. And I spotted that he was really good at drawing them, so I paid him some money. I can't remember how much it was. It was probably about 5 pence, 10 pence. I got him to draw them for me, and then I would stencil them, color them in, and sell them for about £1 in year five around the class. As I think that's my favorite entrepreneurial kind of venture.
So it goes way back. I find it interesting, and I think you said this, and I might have missed it. I don't want to assume that I heard it correctly. While you were teaching, you said you were meeting this successful businessman. I found it very difficult during my tenure as a teacher, and also very intimidating to meet people outside other than the parents. And I tell you, I did meet several parents during my 10 or 15 years that had impact on my life because they were businessmen, they were successful in the community, or people worthy of being, a role model. But you made it sound like you had interactions with a lot of people. How did that all come about through some of your side hustles, for lack of a
Yeah,
better word?
what I was saying was I went into personal training because it was a natural kind of progression from, I
Okay.
was into
I'm
fitness.
sorry, I missed that
Yeah,
part.
I was
Yeah.
into fitness at the time. So when I left teaching in 2015, so I could kind of figure out, I was going to the gym a lot at that point as well. I also I'd done a personal training qualification part-time at the weekends and I had the degree in sports performance, so it was something that I was kind of pretty well versed in anyway. And so I think it was that decision that enabled me to meet so many in a city like London. I don't know if it would have been possible in a regular city or town in the UK. I think I was very fortunate to be somewhere like London where all of a sudden you got a couple of referrals and you could be meeting some very, very successful people. And I think that's the beauty of living in a New York or a London or these big cities is the connections. And so a lot of people can find that
Right.
online these days. And going back to the mastermind coaching programs that I was saying before, just getting around other people who are wanting to grow. And so yeah, that was definitely a big stepping stone is that personal training opened up a lot of doors, not just personal training wise, but just to connect with people.
And that takes effort for an individual who, working a full-time job. Our listeners are young professionals, trying to move up in a company. So you're dealing with things every day and going home, probably have family responsibilities and financial responsibilities. And rather than binging Netflix or whatever the current temptation might be, it takes getting out of that comfort level to go out and as you say, expand, improve yourself by meeting more people and spending time with higher performers.
Absolutely. Well, people can do that online these days, right? There's so many communities where they can listen to this podcast, for example, and if there's some sort of community attached to it, or somewhere that they can connect with the other listeners, that would be huge because these are people who are clearly serious and prioritize listening to similar things. right? So there's definitely going to be some connection there. Or even you have these groups, I think, don't you want, is it meetup.com? Something.
Meetup, yep.
Yes, things like that. And instead of going to the pub like we have in the UK, or the brew pub or whatever in the States, could be going to like a meetup or something, and there'll be individuals there who, and it might not be, it could just be the one conversation you have that creates a
Right.
connection, that creates a referral, that links you somewhere. And I think it is a lot about still as well who you know too, and that only happens from moving or trying to move in the right circles.
And did you hear me? I said meetup.
Yeah.
Just in the 20 minutes, 30 minutes we've been talking, I'm already trying to adopt the accent. Meetup for us, for the Yanks that are listening, which are the majority of our listeners, I believe. You mentioned your book titled Teaching on Your Own Terms, but we didn't talk too much about it. Can you go into that a little bit? Tell us what we might expect from that book, what an average, if the person is not a teacher, is it something they should pursue, or is it
I think it's applicable to any business
great?
or any route that people are looking to take, particularly the start of the book. I call it the Five to Thrive, and this was a routine I actually took from teaching, and so it was more of a mental performance routine. And so the first chapter is about this Five to Thrive routine that I used to adopt and just set myself up for the day. And it would be little things like gratitude practices, just mental rehearsals, also then physical performance as well, getting my body ready for the day. Nutrition, how I was fueling the body as well to, not just to look good, but to feel good and to have the energy to be able to do more. And so I think, a lot of that came from being into fitness, being into sport, being a PE teacher and having the sport performance degree. But then a lot of it is also the data tracking and habit tracking that I would talk about in that routine to manage what I was doing, with my routines and trying to be a high performer. And so whilst perhaps I wasn't where I wanted to be back then, definitely still not now. It's those little habits and routines that I think create a foundation where you don't doubt yourself and you can always think positively about you're always moving forwards. And so that was something that was, I think, inside of the book is great for anybody. It's just how you start your day. And I'm a big believer of that. I know a lot of people out there and all of these, successful entrepreneurs and coaches and people perhaps we all look up to, they all preach that as well, right? And so, that was something that served me really well. And then the rest of the book is really about everything that I wrote it back in 2023. So it's a couple of years now. And so, but at that point, we'd been doing this 3 years. I think we'd worked with just shy of a couple of thousand teachers or something like that at that point. So we'd seen a lot. And so it was really writing around like everything that we'd seen work in or in the businesses of our clients and how they could attract clients. And so I was just sharing that around, how we helped our clients get results, enroll students, deliver an amazing experience for their clients, in that case, students. But they were the same principles that I used in my own business when I was doing personal training. And I simply just took that into the online tutoring space as well. And so they're applicable for everything. So yeah, I think people would get some stuff out of it. Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit more about the teacher project itself. How did this come about? Were you still in teaching when you started doing this? Were you out of teaching? Had you written the book already? I'm not
Yeah, so
perfectly
this,
clear on the
yeah, sure.
overall timeline.
So this was 2017. I hired a coach to help me take the personal training business online, right? And I took that online. I tried previously to take it online and I hadn't been able to. And it was because I was trying to figure everything out on my own, right? How to run the online business. I'd hired a mentor previously, as I'd explained from reading that initial book, who'd helped me develop it in person. That was growing very nicely. I wanted to transition it online. And I tried and failed multiple times, about 9 months. I then ended up hiring another coach. Said, here's why you've been failing. You've been trying to target everybody. Who are you really passionate about helping with this? Who do you really want to help and serve? The teachers. I said, serve the teachers. And so initially it was called Teacher Fit Project. And I was helping teachers in the schools improve their productivity, their energy, how they were just showing up and looking after their own physical and mental well-being so they could show up better for their students and improve their work-life balance. And about this was probably March 2019. I was at a conference in San Francisco, and someone said to me, I was saying a lot of teachers just can't afford to buy my coaching program online. And I said it makes sense because if I was a teacher, I wouldn't have been able to invest what I was charging for the coaching program. So they said to me, so you got to find a way to help the teachers make more money. And so that got me thinking, I'm essentially teaching sport, which I was teaching in the school online. I'm going to take the maths teachers, the science teachers, the French teachers, what geography, humanities, and help them teach their students online. So I spent 2019 putting together this program of what I thought was going to work. And to be honest, Russell, I didn't dare launch it and press go. So no one's going to want this. And because I'd already tried doing it for the clientele I did have in the Teacher Fit project, and they all said, no, we're not interested in that. So I thought, I thought you definitely would be, but they weren't. And so they obviously were just interested in the fitness side and what they'd signed up for. Okay, so this wasn't appealing to them. And then it was when the pandemic happened. Of course, all the schools all over the world shut down. And because I'd already learned how to get clients in that online business, I thought I'd just take the same principles and I'll launch this side to the business. And it, it was a lot of good timing for sure, but also I was ready at that time to to do it too. And then it's grown really well since. And we're really proud of the amount of teachers that we've been able to serve and help since then. So we just had our 5-year anniversary in March, just gone.
You are the, I said this in a call yesterday with another podcast guest. I said it was the poster child, and I don't want to make that sound like a bad thing in any way, but you're a great example of expanding yourself by surrounding yourself with the right people, whether hiring them or getting them to do tasks that you struggle with, or getting advice or delegating. So oftentimes, I think part of a drawback maybe to the entrepreneur, especially when they start to see some success, again, in my somewhat personal experience, but in seeing others, is that an entrepreneur has all these ideas and they want to do it all themselves. And that's, at some point, you can't scale. You can't do that. And it's very difficult for a lot of people to realize this is a good idea, this can happen, but I can't make it happen, but I can get somebody to make it happen for me. And it sounds like that you've done a lot of that. And it's a great piece of advice, I think, for anybody struggling with most anything. There's someone out there has an answer for any issue that you're facing personally, right?
Agree. I agree. I think we're all guilty of it. We all think it's quicker, faster if we do it on our own. But who I think it's Brian Tracy, is it? It might be Brian Tracy or Jim Collins, um, who wrote the book about Good to Great, and it's about getting the right people on
Mm.
board. You know, you can go far on your own, or you can go fast on your own, but with others you'll go far, type of thing. I can't remember the exact quote, but it's
No, that's great.
something along those
Yeah.
lines. Yeah.
Are you familiar, this is a bit of a side note, are you familiar with the book by Outliers by, and I've forgotten his name suddenly. He was a reporter for I believe, the New York
I've
Times.
heard
And
I've heard of the book, but I haven't read it. So that's why, I haven't immediately snapped and
yeah,
said,
well,
"Hey,
I
what's this
can't,
supposed?"
Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
Malcolm
Okay,
Gladwell.
cool.
Malcolm Gladwell in Outliers talks about how people become hyper successful. It's a fantastic book, as most of his are. But one of the biggest elements of success, in addition to having the talent and the drive and whatever else, the mental abilities and emotional support and all those types of things, there is, in almost every instance, if not every instance, element of luck or happenstance or opportunity that came along. Do you think if Do you subscribe to Malcolm's concept of there having to be a certain amount of luck to reach that level of hyper success?
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think everyone has a few lucky strikes, and you'll get so many. But one of the things I also said was I felt I was ready to take it. And so a lot of people might have them and they might have had these opportunities, but they didn't realize it was an opportunity because they didn't grasp it. And so that's just because they weren't ready at the time. And so, like you can't let a few failures knock you down and blame and say it's all about just luck. You've got to keep working on yourself so that when the opportunities do keep coming, at one point you'll be ready to snatch it and grasp it.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, just because you missed one doesn't mean you have to miss another. There will be another, most likely, in at some level. That's very good. Let me just look at. I have a few
But
pat
I'm gonna write
questions that
that
I.
Malcolm Gladwell book down. I've been told it a few times now, The Outliers, so I'll make sure to grab a copy. Normally that's what happens
Yeah,
multiple times, and
I've never been disappointed in any of his material, including his podcast. Which, if it's to be honest, I don't know if it's still in production. I haven't listened to it for a while, but just some fascinating studies that he delves into. Along those lines, you have a book, you have your website. Do you have a YouTube channel where this information or some related information is available? Do you do a podcast? Do you have other
yeah, we have
forms of social media our listeners should be aware
our
of?
main channel that we're really trying to focus on for our organic presence and branding at the moment is YouTube. It's just Elliot Phillips.
Okay.
Yeah.
Elliot Phillips. So, listeners, you want to look there for further information as well.
But yeah, the book I just finished reading this morning was one by Jocko Willink around
Hmm.
leadership, and found that really good. The Navy SEAL guy.
Yes.
So read his Extreme Ownership one. This was a good few years ago now, and someone recommended me. I saw it at an event I went to. Someone said it in the presentation that they get all of their leaders in the team or who becomes a leader. They send them out this book, and I thought, oh, I'd only picked up his Extreme Ownership. I didn't know he had any other ones. And so I just finished that this morning and it was a good read. I enjoyed it. And just we were talking about how some of the principles in my book were transferable to other industries. And same for him. He was obviously explaining how the same principles that he took in the Navy SEALs in order to lead the teams and the platoons that he was in charge of. He applied them into business as well, and so a lot of good frameworks in there for leading teams or just being a better leader, even if it's just for your family. And so there was a lot of all around communication, and yeah, it was a really good book.
We don't normally cover or refer to so many publications in my conversations, and this is great because we've listed so many that our listeners, I expect, know of, but probably, as you did with Jocko's book, maybe didn't take advantage of it right away or didn't realize there was more. We've listed five or six, and one of my pet questions when I run out of other information is to find out what books have had the biggest impact on a person. Maybe in two ways: what's on your bookshelf now that you've just finished or trying to get to, but in the grand scheme of things over the last, over your adult life, are there any of the books we haven't talked about that you think you'd like to mention and suggest for our listeners?
Yeah, one of the main ones that we actually send out to our clients when they enroll into our teacher coaching program is the One Thing by Gary Keller. And we send that out because I feel that a lot of people just don't get out of their in a just don't get out of their own way, and they don't move forwards is because they're trying to focus on too many things. You brought this up at the start when you were talking about entrepreneurs trying to do so much, and Gary Keller breaks it down really well. And I remember when I read this book, I still use a lot of this. This was back in when I was teaching, so 2015, 2016. It might have been just after I finished teaching 2016, but still implement a lot of the principles, and it's just really making sure that you probably heard the saying less is more. right? And just focusing on one thing each and every single day, clearing your schedule and moving the needle forwards like that so you avoid that kind of analysis paralysis type of thing. And we've just found that to be so effective, and we'll give it to our clients, the teachers, and it really helps them prioritize building the business whilst they're still in the classroom, for example. So if the listeners here have got projects that they want to work on, but they're working their businesses or whatever it is they're looking to try, and it might not just be a project, could be family things or whatever it is you're aspiring to do. I found that book was huge. It's just making sure you can get out of your own way, simplify things, and even just get 1% better every single day. And that's what it's about. One thing by Gary Keller.
It's a great recommendation. That's not one that's come up in my conversations before, and I'm not familiar with the book, so it's something I certainly need to look for and take advantage of. Thank you for that. Along those lines, you talked about your parents being teachers. Obviously, your parents have a big impact on everybody, for good or bad. Maybe good in some areas and bad in others. I don't. What other people you talked about a mentor that you had? Is there anyone else that's had a big impact on your life? Maybe that came along at the most difficult time and pointed you in the right direction, or gave you that one piece of advice that you needed at that point in time?
I'd say my wife, actually. I got married pretty young at 23. And I think at that particular time, you know, I was going out with, a group of friends, but every week it'd be going out and doing, like as young guys do. And they still do it to this day. And I think, crikey, have they not grown up? These guys. And I've thought that for obviously, best part of a decade now. That they're 40 years old, whatever, and they're still doing the same things that we were when we were early 20s. And so, had I not found my wife at that particular point in time, maybe I wouldn't have gone on that trajectory. It was her. She was the reason why I moved to London. If I didn't meet her, would I have ever moved to London, and would that have ever have even opened up all of those doors? I don't know. And so that was a real key moment, I think.
You mentioned London before, and I meant to say it. I grew up in Chicago, moved away as soon as I graduated college, moved down to Atlanta. I've been to London once, been to New York once, spent a good bit of time in Chicago in the city itself. But it really is something different. Just in the week that I was in London, so amazingly different from. It reminded me more of Toronto, really, than
Yeah,
anywhere
someone
else.
said that. We just brought a new
Really,
team member
maybe
in,
just
and he was in Toronto, and we were speaking about London. He's actually German, but he'd been living in Toronto a fair few years. And he said, yeah, Toronto. I'm in Toronto. I said, what's it like then? He goes, do you know London? It's like, yeah, he's like, yeah, just like London.
I wouldn't say just like, but they remind me of each other more than the American cities I've been to. But the opportunities presented in a situation like that, really quite amazing. London is and it is astonishing, and part of it is cultural. Anything in the United States that's over 150 years old is ancient.
Mm.
And then you get to London, and it's like, well, the new buses are 100 years old. I say that
Yeah.
facetiously, and it's not meant as an insult in any way. London is very impressive, and the things you can see and do and learn there are I just really it was almost unimaginable for me as a U.S. citizen seeing some of the things there. It was a
We
fantastic
we
place to
always
visit.
wonder. It's funny you said it because we always wonder that we'll visit London frequently. Still, we've moved an hour outside. I just love it so much, and we'll go back. And I'll speak to my dad about it, and we'll say, well, I wonder what like the because we really love coming to the American cities as well, right? We love coming to America, and we love the New York. Just being in Denver was fantastic, and all of the cities there, I think they just feel bigger than the UK cities. I really love that, and
Hmm.
I feel that energy. But we feel that in London too, and I think that's the only city in the UK that has that similar feel. And so we'll always end up saying, I wonder what, because we love coming to the American cities so much. What do the Americans think about when they come to London? How do they perceive it? And that'll always be something we'll bring up in our conversations when we're there.
Yeah, in American cities, I've had the opportunity to travel some with business and personally as well, and I love each city has their own kind of vibe, kind of feel. Denver, um, L.A., Vegas, all have their own personality to it, and not to take away from any of those, because everyone is unique and everyone has something. Every city has something to bring to it that a visitor. Have you been to Hawaii? Honolulu,
No,
not
I
Honolulu, but
haven't. I
Hawaii in
haven't.
general, to me
No, I haven't been there. No.
is one of the most. This is going way back, but first time we landed in Hawaii, we're talking about a feel that no one that you don't get anywhere else. I've never seen anywhere else. You land in Hawaii, you're walking through the airport. There's a roof, but no walls. So the entire airport, my memory, the entire airport is just open to the weather. Of course, the weather is perfect.
Yeah.
That's the most unusual feeling that I've come across.
Yeah. That
Um,
sounds great.
we had I worked for a large cement company that is no longer, well, it's been absorbed by an even larger cement company that was actually based in the UK. And we had some visitors come over from the UK, from Malaysia, for a seminar that we were putting on. And it was funny because some of the guys from the UK thought, and we're in Atlanta, and they said, when we get done this afternoon, we would finish up at 4 or 5 with our meetings. He said, when we get done this afternoon, I was wondering if we could head on up to New York City, or something, thinking it was, we could make that in an hour or two drive, spend an hour or two in New York, drive back. It's like, well, we could. It's about a 9 to 11 hour drive.
Yeah.
So what do you mean? Just the scale, the size of things really threw off some of our European visitors from
It's the same.
what they were used to in
It's the
there.
same on the maps when we're in the States, because in the UK it'll look what's the same distance on the map is so much smaller. You think, oh, that's a 10-minute walk or something like that. That's doable. We'll do the same. I don't do it anymore because I've got used to it after all these years. But initially it was like, oh, it's just around the corner. And then you actually punch the thing in to make sure you're not going wrong, and you press the location and get the direction. It comes up 40 minutes, and it's it's like, wow, okay, Uber.
More than I bargained
Yeah,
for.
yeah. But
Well,
that's great. You said about Hawaii. I call them impact cities or places. These type of places that just the energy and the vibe just helps you get to another level. London's one for me, New York and Rio in Brazil, but the
hmm,
three impact cities that where you get there and it's just the environment, the energy of the place, and how things happen take you to the next level.
great, great, Rio. We're getting close to the hour, so I want to have a final few questions that I always put out there for the users, and I want to, or our listeners, and I want to have plenty of time for you to elaborate, but no pressure for you to continue on for 7 minutes if you don't have
No worries.
the
I'll
desire to do
see
so.
what I got.
But my last two questions, I'll give them both to you, and then just let you run with them in whatever way you want. What are some of the indisposable habits that you have? If there's something I missed, if there's a point of information that I missed that you'd like to tag on the end, or a closing piece of advice, a final recommendation you might make for something for our listeners, can you combine all those points into a few paragraphs? And I think when you get through that, we'll be pretty much on the target for time wise.
Sure. So in terms of the mantras, I normally adapt it each year to see if there's anything I can add into it. The the general framework stays the same, but just how can I enhance it? So this year, normally the first thing is always silence for me with AirPods in, and just to really get grounded. And so I always listen to Hans Zimmer's Inception song from the soundtrack Time. It's the first thing I listen to every single day. You know, when you load up your phone and it says most listened to songs or whatever on Apple, that's been top for years. And so I listen to that every single day without fail, complete silence. And this year, what I've done is I'm using a red light therapy panel. So I'm doing the silence in front of the red light therapy to help with recovery, and just improve overall well-being. And so I'm using that. And then from there, it's I'm writing three things down every day without fail in my journal. Three things that I'm grateful for. Writing the one thing down that I'm going to do today. Sometimes I do it the night before, but if I haven't, after I've read the three things, it'll be that one thing from Gary Keller. So I'll implement that. And then really from there, it's Daily Stoic. Read the latest day in the Daily Stoic. And then it's straight downstairs to read. And so that'll be the next thing is study. And so you asked as well, what would be one thing advice as well for the listeners? I was just going to say it'd be invest into learning and don't stop trying to learn and improve yourself. And so that first 30 minutes of study for me never gets missed in the day. So I like to read. For other people, it doesn't have to be reading, right? It could be listening to an audiobook, it could be watching a YouTube video or listening to the podcast, it could be anything like that, it could be listening to this. I like to read, and so I just make sure I've got that study in there, that self-improvement. So that'd be the one thing is like don't ignore that, like work on you first. Yeah. And so that would be that. And then from there it's the like I said, the exercise. And so for example, today I didn't exercise how I would normally exercise because just feel inside of my body felt really tired. We'd been away for 2 weeks prior in Denver for our event, so I hadn't had my usual routine, and so this Monday was the first day I got back into it, and so my body was feeling a little bit sore after Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and so I just went for a walk today, and then went to the pool and did a swim, and so that wouldn't be usually what I would do, but it's still the principle of doing something physically to set yourself up. So that's kind of the morning mantras or whatever that I have, and so yeah, that's the foundation, the solid routine of being able to keep going even when things aren't going well is just relying on that to get yourself in the right frame of mind.
That's great. It astounds me as I go through more and more in conversations and interviews how things repeat themselves and the process of what successful people do on a regular basis and the discipline that they bring to it, but the actual things they're doing, the mindfulness, the practices you do. I hadn't heard of red light therapy. I'll have to look at that and many other things there that are great pieces of advice for our listeners. So, listeners, this was Elliot Phillips, author, entrepreneur, businessman, coach, PE teacher, husband, father.
Yep,
Did we cover that?
Fiber free. Yep.
Father of three. Thank you so much for your time. I learned a lot. I enjoyed this immensely. I hope you have great success with your book and the teacher project. And thank you for the work you're doing for the teachers that so oftentimes they go unrecognized and they don't have resources. So I think you're providing a great service to a well-deserving audience. Listeners, this was The Science of Self. Elliot Phillips. Don't forget to check him out on YouTube, as well as, is it theteacherproject.com?
Teacherproject.io.
.io. Thank you very much. And listeners, we'll see you again next week. Thanks for joining us today.